Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Current Status. I'm Pumla Schmidt, one of your co-hosts, also known as Exchange Goddess on the Twitters. And I've got my co-host here, which I'm going to send off to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Teresa Miller, and you can find me on Twitter as 24/7 IT Connect. And we are joined today by Michael Lechen, who is one of my coworkers at Cohesity, actually. I'm going to go ahead and let Mike introduce himself.
Well, thank you. So I'm Mike Lechen. I don't have a fancy Twitter handle like you two. Mine is very lame and just M Lechen and nice and I would say easy, but nobody spells my name right. So I don't know why I thought that was going to be easier. So yeah, as Teresa said, I am the Director of Technical Advocacy at Cohesity and have been there for a little over a year now. So I'm getting other stuff later.
Awesome. So today's show is going to focus specifically on data protection. We'll probably talk a little bit about whether or not we actually need data protection, but is data protection just backups and recovery? Like, can backup be more? So I think it would be fantastic to talk about that a little bit more. So let's go ahead and start with the question on the screen. Mike, what do you think? Do you need data protection?
Yeah, I would argue you don't need data protection. You need data recovery. I don't think anyone cares whether they have the data protection. Nobody, like, you don't care how it's getting there. You care about being able to get it back. And I think that is critical. In all reality, if your enterprise is running or even your small business is running and you don't have some sort of protection to make sure that your mission critical information is secure, you can get it back, things fail. And it's not always hardware. I mean, people make mistakes. I think all of us have probably been through it where we have the horror stories of someone that did something. I mean, I know at one point
I've done it.
Yeah. I threw a switch in a data center one time and took down a 24/7 shop, and we took down 2 AS400s that were running it for the next 2.5 weeks. That one did not go well in the CIO's office right after we got everything back up, but you make mistakes and stuff happens. And if you can't come back from it, I mean, it's not just us making the mistakes. It's somebody else does something, and especially now with so many things hosted. If you don't think about what you're doing with your data, how are you going to keep your business running? I mean, right now people worry about you have the people there, and the redundancy of people becomes an issue, but it doesn't matter if your data's not there. You can have all the people in the world. They can't do anything.
So is it really data protection or is it business continuity?
So I definitely think it's data. I would list it as data protection. So for me, business continuity, data protection, and disaster recovery are all
they're related, right? I mean, they're definitely related, but like personally, I feel they're separate components intertwined. Like
so,
they're weaved together.
Yeah, for me, business continuity means that I can continue running right away, almost, or within a very, very short period of time.
Yes.
Data protection doesn't necessarily give me that. Like the data protection level needs to be enough of what I can absorb of downtime. Much like I mentioned, like right now with people, if businesses are lacking business, if their business model didn't account for them having downturns, I mean, you look at the holidays. Some people are very cyclical. They get lots of sales during the holidays. What do you do? What's a ski resort do during the summer? If the ski resort doesn't have another plan, then they're not protected. And it's the same thing with your data. It's what you can absorb on it. Where business continuity, you want to be able to almost keep going right away.
So
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So kind of shifting gears slightly. So we're definitely not dealing with business continuity when it comes to recovery. What about ransomware? Like, ransomware is one of those things. I can't tell you how many people I've run into, former coworkers who are off at different places now, for example, who are like, yeah, we had a ransomware attack and we're still recovering, or we couldn't get our data back. And so when we talk about data protection, I think some companies found out the hard way they weren't doing it right. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for ransomware, you've got to look at it at the multiple different layers of defense. So if I'm looking at the data protection as how I'm going to protect myself from ransomware, then I'm already behind the curve. If I haven't looked at things and said, well, have I made sure that my users are trained? Are they getting the right amount of antivirus training and social training so that I can't have somebody just call up and get my password? If I'm not doing those things and I'm not doing patches and all the other things that make you run a good enterprise, then the data protection isn't going to get you there. However, those other things do fail. You've got to have those lines of defense. So I think it's layered, especially when it comes to ransomware, because really your data protection scenario isn't going to help you right away, most likely on your ransomware. Like you're going to find out you got hit by ransomware. Now, yeah, you need it to do recovery, to get data back, to get systems back online. But do you know whether they were already infected? Do you know if they're going to continue to be infected? And how are you stopping that next time? So I think there's a lot more pieces to it than just for when you look at data protection, that starts almost at not I'd say at the edge, but it's at the edge of your environment with your firewalls technically and your IDS IPS solutions, but then also the edge of your company with your people and training your people and getting your people to make sure that they're doing it. And then goes all the way into your core and how you're protecting that true data.
So would you say it's a complete process, right? It's like an onion, almost.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah. So there's layers to the onion because you've got the technical piece, you have the business piece, the processes, and then there's the I need to test to make sure that all this protection actually works. Because how often do enterprises they implement this awesome data protection plan? Something happens. And oops, yeah, something gets deleted and they got to recover it and it doesn't work.
They never tested it.
Yeah, it's what's the point of investing all this money into this data protection system, software, process when you're not even testing to see if it works?
Well, I think if you're using your only thing you're using your data protection solution for is that data protection solution. Wow, that was hard to say.
We like to catch you here in the current status.
If you're only using that for your insurance policy, you're doing it wrong.
Totally.
Because if it's your insurance policy, no one checks their insurance policy. Like, when's the last time you looked up what is really included in your homeowner's policy? Nobody.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, yeah, it's true now.
You should check it every once in a great while.
Now,
but
I just bought a new car, so I had to go and look at different car insurance, and I hadn't looked at my car insurance stuff in over a year. Now I try to look it over just to make sure, because you never know, right, that you can get a better deal somewhere else. But on average, most people, I mean, you don't look at your insurance. Now, your health insurance, I think we get into the habit of reviewing what's in our health insurance plan because we have those annual, what do you call them?
Enrollment.
Yeah.
Open enrollment.
Thank you for those words. It's been a rough day today. It's been a hot day.
It's very warm.
But I'm drinking gas station wine today, okay? I just had to say that.
Does that have a cupcake on it?
Yes. I got it at Sheets, okay? It's times are tough right now.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
I know. I'm like, the wine store isn't open. It closed. Like, what am I supposed to do? Oh, Sheets has wine. Yeah.
That was your insurance policy.
Yeah, it totally is. Between Sheets and the giant grocery store. Like, those are my insurance policies when I run out. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, I think for people that aren't just looking at the insurance policy and are using their data protection for things like analysis of things they're backing up or logs or doing scanning or using it to help with their test dev, they don't get caught with their pants down, for lack of a better term, because they're utilizing their data. They know that it's going to work because they're using it on a regular basis. If you're using something like a test dev scenario where you've got your database servers and you know your developers are working off of your backups to do your development, you know your backups work because you're using them.
So are you advocating backing up test and development?
I'm saying use your backups to create your test dev. However, I will say in a lot of places, test dev is still production.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The people that are like, oh, it's fine, it's just a development box. Do I pay my developers? Last time I checked, I paid my developers.
I worked somewhere that decision was made well before I started there, and all I had to worry about was my applications and making sure that those were protected. So, because I wasn't the backup admin per se, and then all of a sudden we had a major SAN outage and lost over 100 disks because of an issue with a bunch of drives. Oh yeah.
Good Lord.
And guess what most of was on there? Test dev. And guess who wasn't happy? The business.
Well, think of it this way. Most test dev environments, that's stuff that is probably critical. Most likely they're probably working on some major project, something that's going to cost a lot of money. And eventually it's going to roll into production, or probably already has behind your back. And which has happened. So you should be backing up the test dev area. And if the developers say, no, you don't need to, this is my test area, don't listen to them. Don't, because they're going to do something. Yes, they are going to do something that's going to be like an, oops, I screwed up here. Do you have a backup by any chance? Can we roll back? And if you don't, if you just happen to be taking snapshots or backups, yeah, you can be like, okay, yeah, we can roll back, but let's say they did something major. Hello, they're done. They have to rebuild. So that, that's going to cost money. That's going to cost time. It's those soft dollars.
I do think you can look at it and maybe change your schedule. Your redundancy levels don't necessarily need to be as high for your test dev. I mean, in all reality, if I've got a production database that is running an e-commerce system, I want that thing taking snapshots as frequently as I possibly can so I don't lose the transaction.
Yep.
But at my developer's SQL environment, maybe I don't need it, but the web environment that they're building the application on top of, I probably need to at least get a daily backup of that so that I don't lose days and weeks of work of a developer working on it. Because you're right, it's probably my next gen of my solution. At
and
this point, it's important.
If they do happen to do something bad and delete something, the onus is on them, right? If it was their fault or whatever, at least there is a backup. They can roll back to 12 hours ago, or maybe it was compromised. They got a virus. Something happens. We can roll back. There's always that what if. And again, it's that insurance policy, right? You just never know. And I feel like more enterprises really need to think about that. Like, what if? And a lot of enterprises are really taking that risk with the what if because of cost savings. They're trying to, there's always numbers involved. They're trying to reduce their budget. They're trying to, pinch pennies. How can we save dollars? Maybe we don't need to back some of this stuff up because depending on our licensing, maybe it's capacity-based licensing because I know some software vendors are capacity-based. Or, if it's a different type of licensing, we have X number of servers we can back up. I mean, it always comes back to money at the end of the day.
So something Mike mentioned at the beginning of this question or comment with DevTest was that companies can actually, with a backup solution, which you can assume probably would be the company we work for, you can actually potentially no,
we're vendor neutral.
That you can actually take your production system, you've backed it up, you've protected it, and then you can bring it online, say in the cloud, for example, and do your dev test, your development, your testing against it. And you can either tear it down when you're done and then make that change to production, or you actually have the ability to pull that back down. Let's say that other environment was on-prem, right? And then push those changes right in. So doing your development off of a copy of your production system and having the ability to push that and roll that in is a big deal. And that can save a ton of money on even standing up, say, a test environment, if you're just spinning stuff up and bringing things down. So I wanted to make sure that we called that out, because it's a different way of thinking about how to do development, for example, and testing.
Sorry if my eyes are wandering. The fly is coming.
I was going to say, you have your fly. I saw you looking at your window, and I was like, oh, the fly.
Okay, everyone, a quick story. There's a fly in the room. It's a big, nasty fly, and it's making all this noise, and it's like right by the window, and it's really annoying me. So if my eyes start wandering, it's because I want to attack this fly, and there it goes again.
I think I just saw it that time.
No, it's huge. You can put a leash on it.
We don't hear it.
Yeah, I think you're right. In a hybrid type environment, that's one of the best scenarios for you to give you. It's a great usage for data protection, in that there's no reason you don't necessarily save the money on don't have that data sitting on your production system on your tier 0 and tier 1 array or NAS that's sitting there, all that data. It's not needed. Your developer, yes, what they're doing is important, and keeping their data is important. We stress that plenty. But that doesn't mean that they need to have the same response time on things as a customer. Now, like a customer needs to be able, you want them to be able to have that very quick, speedy response time. If a developer has to wait a second and a half for something for a query to run, they'll be okay.
Yeah,
contrary to the DBA's comments about it, they will be okay.
Customers come first. And I strongly believe in that. You know, the customer, the business, the customer should always come first. And then, you know, our internal, and I called, you know, developers, IT, we're internal. We come second, unless it's an absolute critical outage and your email system's down, then slightly different. But customers always come first.
So I do think, though, if you look at it, you look at test dev, and it's kind of the last thing on it. Now, if you're, or it's kind of on the edge, you could look at maybe almost even a archive type scenario versus your backups, and have test dev, a backup, your production, your backup, and an archive. And having those multiple layers makes a difference as well. I mean, I've used the analogy before that you back up your data, but you archive your memories. On it.
I like that.
So part of the reason for that, when I look at, and you look at your phone, for example, we now take all these pictures with our phone. Now, if it takes me longer to get to the picture I took yesterday, it will annoy me. I want the picture I took yesterday to show up right away. If I know that I took a picture 3 years ago, but it's still on my phone somewhere or someplace it's essentially archived off my phone, but still accessible, I don't mind if it takes an extra second and a half to get to it. Those are things that can be archived because they're just memories at that point. They're things that I'm trying to get to. So I think you also have to really consider what the different levels are. And that plays right into then what should be on-prem, what should be out in the cloud, what should just start in the cloud, stay there. And you've got all these different things. So if it starts as traditional, goes out into a cloud native, you know the difference on it. You know where different things should be and when, because not all of it should be sitting there.
So what are your thoughts on cloud native data protection, or even just in general data protection in the cloud?
I think cloud native is the most overused, confusing
Oh my gosh,
on the planet right now.
That's why I think I reworded it, because I'm like,
if you want to look at something that is what you would do with something that is cloud first, I think it makes sense. Cloud native is always interesting to me. If you're saying, some people look at it and say containers or things like Kubernetes are cloud native. Last time I checked, I could run Kubernetes on-prem. So is that still cloud native if it's on-prem? So I think that the cloud native is a weird term for starters, but as far as what to do with those, I think if I look at cloud native as SaaS applications that I use in the enterprise, oh, look at it. See, cloud first. I like it. If it's cloud first things, like I'm doing development in the cloud well, then I still need to make sure that I'm same protection. It's the same as an on-prem solution if I'm developing against it or I'm building my enterprise around it. If it's a SaaS application, same type scenario.
Is it better?
Just because you're sitting there and somebody else is running the infrastructure doesn't mean that they're going to give you all the resiliency that you would do for your own.
So I have a question with that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you've got a SaaS application or your app, whatever, your infrastructure's in the cloud, the majority of it. Would you use a hybrid setup from a data protection, or would you use a cloud first setup? Or would you even back that up at all or protect it?
100%.
Because there's always that question. Do you back up Office 365?
Yes.
Now, everybody knows my Twitter handle, Exchange Goddess, and I get so many people asking me that question, and I do have an answer for that.
I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. You've got to back it up somehow. Whether you would use a hybrid or a cloud native backup solution, I think is really on a preference of, do you have, I mean, if you're going everything out in the public cloud, you don't have no reason to run a data center. Like a lot of the reasons I think people move to primarily SaaS solutions and cloud solutions, their business is not to do IT. Their business is to do whatever else. They run a shop that makes mufflers. That's their business. Whatever it happens to be. Their business isn't to run a data center. So they don't necessarily want to add that run the data center in just because they want it out of the cloud, but they do need to look at the parts of the cloud solutions that can protect you. Maybe it is a cloud native backup solution, but make sure you're going to a different availability zone or a different data center, a different region, someplace else, so that you still have that off-prem essential, because your on-prem is now that region that you're in the cloud. So people can say, like, you got on-prem and then the cloud, but if you're all in the cloud, that is your on-prem.
Yeah, it is. It's your only prem.
It's your only prem. So make sure you have another prem.
So if it's your only prem, you need to protect it, regardless if it is cloud or actually physically on-prem,
Exactly.
Right? It's my point of view with this is, regardless of where your data is, you need to protect it. Yes, if it's being hosted by somebody, who really cares, right? That's besides the point. It's your data. Ultimately, you are responsible for your data, and you're responsible for if you have customers. So you need to do everything that you can to make sure that your data is protected. So Office 365, yes, it really does depend. Do I need to back it up? Well, if you need point-in-time recovery, back it up, right? If your business requirements and objectives require you to have certain types of backups, then yeah, back it up. But if it doesn't, then you can use the data protection that's built in to the software, Office 365, and do that type of protection. It's not backup. It is a form of data protection, though. It's not a point-in-time recovery where something like Cohesity or Veeam has, right? That does the Office 365 backup, which is what I would call a traditional backup. It's a point-in-time recovery. And most organizations, especially healthcare, they like that point-in-time recovery because you just never know with lawsuits.
Yeah. A lot of organizations do.
Yeah, that point-in-time recovery.
Also SLAs too, in terms of recovery for the unexpected.
So, if you're in a situation like that where you do have SaaS, and if there is something built in, cloud first, cloud native, whatever type of design it is that protects your data, look at that. But also look at what your business requirements are. If your business requirements determine a certain set of requirements, then you need to abide by that, regardless of what the software vendor says. That's my take on having worked across different types of industries, global healthcare, you name it. There are certain regulations that we need to follow, and sometimes I went against what Microsoft's best practices were or guidance. Right? I backed up Exchange when I needed to because my business requirements required it, and there's times that I didn't do that because we did the full data protection within Exchange itself. So there's different scenarios. It all comes back to your business requirements and what your business actually needs and wants from you. Your SLAs, right, Teresa?
Absolutely.
What they're expecting from you.
Yeah, so out in the audience is saying she does wish that Microsoft had a native 365 backup solution in Azure, which I think, I mean, that's so true. I mean, it's not, you don't really get data protection for Office 365. You get a bunch of workarounds to protect.
It's protection.
Your
It's
data.
not essentially I call it data protection in a different sense. It is protecting the data with legal holds and things like that. They are we are protecting the data. It is not what we would traditionally call data protection, using backups and whatnot, because data protection is, in my sense, it's so broad. You're protecting your data, and there's different means to do that. Oh my gosh, I drank the Kool-Aid. Somebody shoot me.
It's true, though. Data protection isn't just about a backup. It's
no,
true.
It's not.
I mean, you
it's
can put security
else.
into it. You can put quick resilience, quick recovery. There's all sorts of other spots that you can put that into. I think you mentioned that you've always had some sort of backup. I actually worked for a firm. I did a lot of work for resellers. Earlier in my career, I was kind of an outsourced admin engineer kind of level person. Had a bunch of different customers. One of them that I worked for, actually, because of what they did, specifically could not keep their backups.
Mm-hmm. I've been in that situation too. It was like less is more.
Not keep it more than, I think we were only. It was, they were required to keep it for 7 days and could not keep it for more than 14.
Oh wow!
I know a very big company.
Or something like that. And it was, I mean, wow. I get it. It was because they would get sued. If they got sued, they could say they didn't have it.
Yes. Yeah. I know of a company, very large tech organization that is like that. They keep no backups, no PSTs, no nothing. Like and their backups, like you said, 7 days, it's like the minimum. Because if they have, so if you have a policy and you get sued, they can go back and go, well, we don't have the data because our policy states that we don't keep backups for more than 7 days and we don't keep backups of this type of data. So, if your policy states that you don't have it or shouldn't have it, then you don't really need to give it up to the courts.
It gives them some indemnity.
Yeah, I've not seen less than a year on that. So 7 days, 2 weeks, holy cow. So we have a question. Actually, we have a question from Lynn. Or do you want to finish a thought there, Pumla?
Go ahead. Which question? I'll put on the screen here.
So the backups and data protection have changed over the years, but do you see any newer technologies that make data protection easier to implement and manage? So maybe Mike can take that.
Oh, I like that one.
That's I mean, not that, while this is vendor independent. Yeah, definitely. I think because when you look at a modern data protection solution, it shouldn't just be about data protection. It should be about data management. So when you're looking at, you should be looking at a true data management solution on it. So something that will allow you to not just have backups, not just have snapshots, but utilize it and not make an insurance policy. Have applications that can run against it. Be able to monitor and track what people are doing. There's a lot to it. So, I mean, that's a lot of what Cohesive was founded on, is how do we do more with that data on it. So whether you're using it to run the production stuff, whether you're using it to run just your backups, whether you're using it to do snapshots and use test dev, having a data management solution that can do all of it is really where the next gen of data protection has to go.
So that makes sure that data is not just sitting there stale. Like, you're not just taking backups and letting them sit. And I think that's what we've historically done. So when you can do more with that data, I think it's extremely helpful to any organization. You can archive it. You can use it for disaster recovery, store your files, and more.
I mean, these solutions can get pricey for your environment. Don't make it an insurance policy. I don't buy a sports car for it to sit in the garage. You buy it to use it. You buy it to
What do you mean?
You shouldn't buy the sports car to sit it in the garage. They want to be driven. especially when they're bright red.
I drove 100 miles today, so there you go.
Well, as long as you did it in under an hour, we're okay.
I beat that BMW, okay?
Oh my gosh, I saw that. I was laughing.
Well, we are just about out of time. This was a really, really great conversation that could probably go on all evening because
Yeah.
it's like an onion, right? We just keep peeling off layers of it.
Agreed. Thank you guys. This has been really fun. Enjoyed it.
This
Yeah,
was
thanks
great.
for joining us.
We want you back though. We can chat again on another topic. Maybe we can talk about cars that should not be stuck in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That works.
All cars are toys.
Yes.
Play with them like they are.
Yes. Well, thank you, Michael, for joining us, and thank you, our audience, for joining us and listening to us. We will have this podcast out on YouTube and also my new Twitch channel, as well as Apple Podcasts. I'm saying that correctly. I used to say iTunes and SoundCloud. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great evening, morning, or afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.